Welcome to the InsureTalk podcasts, and I'm your host, Mangesh, Vaitla. And today, InsureTalk is primarily a platform for the insurance industry, to learn from the industry leaders on who are in the thick and thin of the action, especially in the dynamic ecosystem, and how they are steering their organizations in the current dynamic world. So to start with, for the podcast today, let me welcome our guest, Mr. Dipu. We all in the industry know you. It's primarily Dipu is from Bajaj Allianz General Insurance. He is the head of operations and customer service. And before starting his career in Bajaj Allianz, he did his master's in management from IIM Lucknow, and post that with a 20 years stint at G Capital. He started his career in Bajaj Allianz. In the last 7 years, it's been a very dynamic period, and if you understand his profile, there are more than about 200 odd articles he has written, and more than about 450 conferences that have been addressed across 5 continents, and amazing record for translated in terms of about 100 plus awards. So let me welcome our guest, Mr. Dipu. Welcome to the podcast, Dipu.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mangesh. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. And it's always a pleasure, talking to you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure too. And I couldn't find anybody more apt for the topic that we are talking about in the general insurance industry, distribution transformation. So I think anybody more apt than you. So, but before I start the topic of the day, let me start by first asking a more personal question. Looking at the kind of the role that you are heading in terms of the operations and customer service, which itself is very tasking and demanding in terms of the kind of 1,600 odd people, 150 locations reporting into you. And in addition to that, talking about the aspects of the key innovation and transformation, which itself is a separate independent role. And in addition to that, you are also always eager to share your experiences across the social network, and as well as in the media. So how do you, and in addition to that, plus having so many articles, conferences and awards, I'm amazed by the kind of the energy you carry. So how does Dipu get his energy and motivation? That's my first question. It's difficult to balance such a hectic life in addition to the personal family commitments. Let me start with that question.
No, thank you, Mangesh. I think it's good to, start with, a personal question, because, it just makes you, think, even as the question is being asked. I think, Mangesh, I think 2 things, which define me. I think one is a very strong faith in God. I think that's something which has always been there. And the other, I think, is, passion for, whatever I do. I think passion helps you, overcome obstacles. And, the way to, juggle these, various hats, which you mentioned, whether it's keeping the lights on or driving transformation, or sharing knowledge. I think it comes from the passion that, whatever we have done, right? And if, we can share our knowledge, not only within the industry, but even across the industry. And if, it helps, us, propel the, the industry forward, the economy forward, right? I think, it's a huge source of satisfaction. So I think, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, undoubtedly. Passion is without that, nothing would have actually, you are absolutely on the dot. And coming to at Bajaj Allianz itself, within your stint at 7 years, which I would not say a very long one, but within that, and bringing Bajaj Allianz to the top 8 of the global 100 digital insurer, is an amazing credit. And in that sense, considering the market, the topic of today was more to understand how the insurance industry is evolved in the recent years, especially general insurance. And I'll primarily focus on the retail side, because general insurance is a vast industry, and I have just focus on the personal lines retail side, which primarily is a growth that you have really spearheaded. In that sense, and especially in the market context where the market dynamism of the India stack happening, the consumer behavior transforming so significantly, and in addition to so many distribution models entering into the spectrum with aggregators, in addition to the conventional brokers and corporate agents, the aggregators coming into place, the POS brokers, the open architecture for bank assurance. How and what do you see? Which kind of a distribution model at Bajaj Allianz will have the largest impact, and also for across the industry?
Yeah. So I think, Mangesh, you touched upon multiple dimensions, in your
Yeah.
query, right? In terms of how the industry has evolved and, how the distribution has kept pace, with the evolution of the industry, right? And which is going to make an impact. See, if you look at the insurance product itself, it's a push product. You don't wake up in the morning, thinking of insurance, because you think of insurance when, you have a problem, right? Either you crash your car or you need to get hospitalized, right? If I just pick the two biggest lines in terms of motor and health, and you don't think of, get up thinking you'll have a bad day, right? You get up thinking you'll have a good day. So that is the reason, insurance is a push product, and it gets sold, through conversations. We call it a conversational sale.
Yeah.
And that is the reason why distribution plays a very significant role. You look at the insurance market globally, in most markets, in virtually all markets, it's largely intermediary driven. Now, when you talk about a country with our complexity,
Yes.
With population across, multiple, linguistic, regions, across, various parts of the digital evolution curve, right? You will need to have, multiple forms of distribution. So, for example, one is a traditional agent, right? Because they are the ones, who basically reach out to individual customers and sell them policies. And then,
Yes.
of course, you have banks, right? Bank assurance is a significant form of, insurance. You
Yes.
also had, e-commerce players, picking up pace, in recent times. Of course, you have brokers, right? And they've always been there. So we expect all forms of distribution to actually, play a significant role, because they all have their own, unique way of, tapping various segments. And if you
Yes.
look at the penetration of insurance in India, general insurance, we have a long way to go. It's approximately 1% of GDP. This is calculated as, premium as a percentage of GDP.
Yeah.
Global average is, more than 3%. So, we have a long way to go. So the answer to your question is, I think all forms of distribution, will have a significant role to play.
Oh, no. So it will always remain a mixed model, but not that any specific channel will have a large impact, especially the focus today on the digital side. And considering you rightly touched upon that it will remain as a push product, and whatever the digital direct to customer will still remain a certain add-on, and it will not. But one thing that brings me to this question is that the trend is the industry getting fragmented, where earlier days the insurers were directly in touch with the selling to the customer, and now the proportion of the independent channels is growing. So is the value chain fragmenting, and is the insurer losing the customer ownership? Do you see and feel any of that sense?
See, if you look at the general insurance industry, Mangesh, you look at, again, any market globally, it's always had multiple players.
Yes.
It's not like some other industry, where, let's say, the top three players, combine together to have 70 to 80% of the market share, right? You look at most, markets, the top players have, the leaders, right, have single digit market shares, or, maybe, low double digits, right? That's one thing. So the industry has always been, always had multiple players. Yeah. And the distribution model, has also been always there, because it's always been a push product. So from that perspective, whether it's the number of insurance players or distribution playing a significant role, or within the distribution landscape, having multiple forms of distribution, it's always been there. The rise of digital, and some of the other trends that you spoke about, they have only been enablers, right?
Yes.
So what they have done is, they have helped the insurers and distribution players, adopt digital tools and technologies, to get closer to the customer. So that's what, we've seen. And it's not just in India, but globally as well, during the last many years.
Yeah. So you're right. Possibly they have helped in terms of a compare shopping or a one-stop shopping or bundling it with a different kind of products. So whether it is travel, whether it is accident or something. So it is more of a they have enabled and really got you closer to the market still, but you don't see that ownership actually going away from the insurance industry. But in that landscape, do you see the competitiveness in terms of because there is somebody else driving the customer in terms of and in an open architecture or in an independent channel every time you are fighting, so does it impact your market share? And it's always a every time you are fighting for the share with all the players.
Yeah. So two aspects to your question, Mangesh. One is from a competitiveness point of view. It's always been there, right? I mean, you look at the customer, right? There are multiple players in the ecosystem, who reach out to him. So, if, for example, if you take motor insurance, there are OEM players, right?
Yes.
Similarly, if you look at health insurance, right, you have agents who reach out, right, apart from other forms of distribution, and then you have banks as well, right? So, and they all work with multiple players, right? So multiple players and multiple forms of distribution. So competitiveness is definitely there. Now, to your point around whether the changes in the marketplace, whether they impact competitiveness, the one dimension I want to bring in is that this affects all players, right? It's not that it only affects, some players. So whatever
Yes.
changes happen affects the entire industry. So it
Yeah.
depends on how agile you are and how quickly you can adapt, right? I mean, it goes back to Darwin's theory of evolution, right? Survival of the fittest. If you're
Yes.
agile and, you're adaptable, then obviously you're in the game. But if you're slow to respond, then you are, likely to, lose market share.
Absolutely, absolutely. And yes, undoubtedly, your point is well taken. And especially in this race for survival of the fittest and to be the fittest in a very competitive market is where the race. And that brings me to my next question in terms of as a hat that you wear for innovation and transformation, that falls back upon you at a very significant level to envision at a longer time span and to create a sustainable transformation rather than just implementing some technology solution. So I would be more interested to understand some of your experiences in these innovation that you have been spearheading as to how you have used those innovations in a general context as your operational and customer service, but also in a distribution context, more specifically that how those innovations have been spearheaded and some key learnings from those. Yeah.
Sure. I think that's a very relevant question, Mangesh. And see, if you look at innovation or transformation,
Yes.
what we have always believed is customer first, technology next, right? Because you need to solve a problem or you need to create an experience which didn't exist before. And
Yes.
then it's once you have the use case in mind that you apply the right technology. It's not
Yes.
about getting caught up with the latest buzzword in town. So, for example, if everybody is talking about Gen AI or blockchain, right? Then
Yes.
you just force fit this technology into some use case. That's not going to yield results. You need
Exactly.
to find the right use case and then apply the technology which makes sense. So from that perspective, Mangesh, and especially since you asked about innovation and transformation, keeping distribution in mind, right? I'll
Yes.
focus on some of
Yes.
those innovations we've made. So one is initially we thought, right, what's our primary product? We basically sell an insurance policy, and then customers, when they come for claims, right, they basically will come. That's what you do, right? You buy an insurance policy and then you come for a claim in case you need
Yes.
it. This
Yes.
are the moments of. So the whole point was when it comes to insurance policies, right? Why do we need to have distributors, pick up documents and then submit them to us, and then we do the entire underwriting and then we get back to the customer or the distribution and the policy be issued. We said, why don't we empower them? So we embarked on this journey of digitizing the whole process. And today, a very significant portion of our insurance policies are issued at the distributors end. They need not come, to us. So that's one significant way, by which we've been able to do that. The other is let's talk about claims, and again that is a moment of truth. A lot of
Yes.
customers will reach out to their distributors and then tell them, saying that I'm in trouble. Can you help me? So I'll just give you one example. If let's say you crashed your car earlier, you would have had to call up the insurance company.
Mm.
They would send a surveyor to the site of the crash. He would assess the extent of damage, submit his report, and the whole process would kick in. That could take days.
Yeah.
So we said, why don't we simplify this? So what we did, we came out with an artificial intelligence based solution
Mm.
by which we just came out with a 2-click process. Now all customers need to do up to certain amounts is to just take photographs of the damaged car.
Yeah.
They need not call a surveyor or wait for him, and then upload them using the mobile app. Just 2 clicks. And from our end, the AI engine will go through the images, assess the extent of damage, and convey the amount to the customer. All this happens in minutes. The customer gives his consent, the money is transferred to him. So what could take days earlier now happens in 20 minutes up to certain amounts. So the moment, from a distributor's perspective, he sees that he can issue a policy and then he can go to his customer and tell him, saying that up to certain amounts, you can get motor claim passed in 20 minutes. It just becomes a dramatically different value proposition. So I think these are some of the innovations which have helped our distributors have faith in us and go to the customer with that confidence.
Very interesting case, Dipu, and very far impacting in the whole process. But in terms of this, as a technology practitioner, there are a lot of finer details when you get into this AI engine and all, and especially you would have crossed those at a very detailed level, at a very high level. But what our audience would like to understand, especially some of those critical aspect in terms of how far-reaching impact, does it impact all the cases or does it impact the critical ones first, and how you implement it and how you envision? Because especially in the beginning you mentioned about our country has so many languages, the photo quality, the camera quality, and the one who clicks and the image quality impacting the AI decision making process. And again, how much proportion of the decision is company able to disseminate to the last mile in terms of a decision process, as keeping in view the risk and the fraud element that involves. So could you shed some light on those dimensions as well?
Yeah. In fact, let me explain that, with another example. It's a very good question that you asked, right? Because the whole point which you asked is, while we may come out with, technology tools, how do they get adopted at scale, cutting across customer segments, right?
Yes.
So what happened before COVID, right? Because nobody forecasted the advent of COVID-19, right? So we had embarked on a digital transformation journey, and we did precisely what you asked. We said, let's not pick niche, simple use cases. So we actually went to our contact center and we said, what are the top reasons customers call you for? Because the top reasons are the most complex reasons. And then we understood those reasons, and then we built journeys on them using our chatbot. And then what we did, because see, what happens in India is we also need to understand the Indian mindset, right? Because a lot of people in India access internet using the mobile phone. So we gave access to our chatbot, not only through the website, but also through WhatsApp. And we were pioneers. Today it's industry standard, but we were pioneers. So customers are comfortable using the mobile phone and, using WhatsApp, and then they could go to a bot. Now, COVID suddenly was thrust upon us. And overnight, for example, we had to shut down our call centers because work from home and, call centers can't operate, when people are in a scattered, environment. So we were able to overnight migrate all our customers to these digital tools. And at that time, the adoption at the peak of the pandemic was 80%. 80% of our customers were contacting us using our digital assets. And Mangesh, the truth lies in the metric, right? That's where the experience comes in. We thought, since customers have to move from, call centers to digital assets, right? Could there be some disruption? Could there be a drop in experience?
Yes. Yeah.
We were also pleasantly surprised. At that time, our complaints fell, not by 10 or 15%, but they fell by 83%. Wow, so overnight we moved to 80% adoption with 83% dip in complaints. I think that just tells you that we were able to get all our digital tools adopted at scale by all our customers across the length and breadth of India.
So you leveraged the challenge and made it an opportunity. Absolutely a wonderful example, and that's really. Is it sustained post the COVID, or was there any reversal of the behavior pattern post the COVID, or it has still sustained?
Both dimensions, Mangesh. Of course, we've been able to sustain because today our penetration of digital servicing is far higher than what it was pre-COVID. And to point around reversal, call centers also are back. So we have seen both. There are
Yeah.
customers who come back to the call center, just as today we all are back in office, and we all are flying planes and staying in hotels, right? Whatever
Yes.
along with that. At the
Yeah.
same time, digital, servicing continues to stay. So we've seen both trends coexisting today.
Okay. So now that's still more of an hybrid model, but the digital adoption has sustained to a large extent and it.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Because people have seen the ease, right? They've got used to it, right? For
Yes.
example, we are today talking on Zoom. This may not have happened, let's say pre-COVID, right? They may have been, a lot of, getting used to, right? Today it's just so
Yes.
easy for us.
Yes. Absolutely. Right. Even just to understand, taking a step back in terms of, you rightly mentioned the customer first is your objective rather than just a technology is later. Technology is just an enabler rather than the business uses. But within the technology landscape, whether it is the initial days of internet to mobility, smartphones, later coming the AI, which is just recent, but before that, the big data analytics or the blockchain, which technology, according to you, would still have, from your use case landscape that you see, would have a larger impact and usage, especially in these buying behavior patterns, whether it is in claims or distribution, or which area do you see that it is having a better attraction?
Yeah. So Mangesh, we see two technologies, making a significant impact, and this comes from adoption so far, and
Yeah.
the exciting, evolution of this same technology which we see in the future. One is AI, right? Because AI for us has stood us in good stead during the pandemic period. Whether it
Yes.
was a chatbot I told you about, where
Yes.
the AI-driven chatbot replaced the call center in terms of servicing, or
Yes.
whether it is the claim experience I told you about, where AI helped us replicate. The experience in a far more dramatic and shorter manner. So clearly AI, and now with the advent of Gen AI, right? That's why I said, the new dimension coming in, right? So AI, I think, will have a significant impact. The other Mangesh, which we've seen is voice. And when I say voice, initially we used to have, call centers, human voice. Then
Yeah.
we moved to text, right? All the bots and, all the servicing that we spoke to, we spoke about text. And then what we've seen over a period of time is at the end of the day, when customers call you, they call you during their bad days. They don't call you during, happy times, right? They call you when they need empathy or a healing touch.
Yeah.
So now what we are seeing is the onus is shifting from digitizing the physical to humanizing the digital. And
Oh.
that is where tech-enabled voice comes in, so where you have the efficacy of bots, but, the healing touch that human beings can provide. So,
Yeah.
and voice can also be multilingual, right? Which can help, amplify reach in the Indian context. So voice and AI, these two technologies in various forms will have a significant impact across the entire landscape.
Yes. That's a very interesting part. Humanizing the digital is a new mantra, and that drives the entire transformation that you are looking at. But any
Right.
key cases where you would like to share with our audiences in terms of the learnings, and especially when you say learnings, we learn more on the failures. Any key examples that you had that where your initial failures helped you learn and improvise more better, because there are so many dimensions in technology adoption, as you rightly said, people dimension, there is a timing dimension, so many aspects. So we would like to, even our audiences would like to understand the failures that were so critical and how you learned from that.
That's a very, very interesting question, Mangesh, because it's very easy to talk about successes, but it's equally important, talk about learnings, right? So let me go back to the chatbot. So initially, when we deployed, I'm talking about much before COVID-19, when we deployed the chatbot, right? I think what happens is we all think, that the shift from analog to digital, or the shift from manual to digital, can happen overnight, with the flip of a switch. It doesn't
Yeah.
work that way, right? There is a period, there's a transition period, right? You need to have a digital handshake.
Yes.
And that's when we realized, right, that for customers to migrate from what they're used to something new,
Yes.
you need to ensure that there's a handshake. So then what we did, and I think, I'll take a cue from the cliche that we have heard, that winners do not necessarily need to do different things, but they do things differently. What happened is we found, that in a lot of websites and a lot of areas, the bot just gives up if it doesn't understand. Then the customer is, forced to go to some other channel. And the biggest challenge is he has to start all over again. He has to once again repeat his complaint, and, the whole process kicks in. So we said, why don't we do one thing? So in case our bot is not able to understand, because you train a bot on various scenarios, but a new scenario can crop up. So
Yes.
what we did, We said if the bot is not able to understand, the bot will immediately transfer the case to a human being. The human being takes over and takes it through to completion. So for the customer, there is no break in service. And at the back end, we maintain an inventory of all the queries the bot could not answer. And then using AI and NLP over a period of time, we keep teaching the bot. So its own percentage of first-time query resolution keeps on increasing. So I think using this combination of man and machine, we learned from the initial phase, and that really helped us, offer supreme servicing, during the COVID period. So when it came to our bot, our customers didn't see any break in service. If the bot is stuck, the human being steps in, and then the bot, is taught at the back end over a period of time. So I think that was one key learning that we need to have. In the shift from manual to digital, you need to have a digital handshake period.
That's a very wonderful example, in fact, of a good learning, because rather than just implementing one digital project, it was more like a phygital, which is just a perfect marriage of human element and that. And especially, we've seen so many customer service scenarios where customers are absolutely frustrated with the digital engagement, and that it drops, and they say that it's not a best customer experience. And I think you're perfectly marrying your roles in customer experience out here to make get the final element of humanizing the digital very well. This brings me to one more dimension, because all these projects are not only about technology, and you understand it well, not only from a customer context, but also from the distribution side. The distribution will still remain a push product, and distribution performance is a very critical element in the success of an insurance company. Have you used technologies that to help, and as you pointed out in the beginning, that they are able to provide the service at a point and issue the policy at the last mile itself? That is very interesting. But even for that distribution performance, what we see in the industry is that they are usually measured, or conventionally have been usually measured in only on the premium collected or the commission as a percentage of the premium. But do you see that trend shifting where the accountability is going to grow towards the dimensions of customer experience, or towards the dimension of better renewability, or better or improvement of loss ratio? Is there, do you see that accountability shifting to the distribution channels as well, and the compensations actually getting linked to the performance across all dimensions rather than all quality dimensions, not just limiting to the top line premium factor?
That's already in place, Mangesh, across, several markets, in terms of multi-pronged, approach to, remuneration, it's already in place. And to your point around, how do you go beyond the earlier dimension that you asked, in terms of how do you go beyond last mile policy issuance, to enabling, various processes for distributors. And I'll give you examples, which range from the simple, to the most complex, right? So let's again go back to the pandemic period, when everybody was working in a distributed manner, as in working from home. And, we used to have digital collaboration tools to interact. How do you train people? Earlier, they would come to the office, and we had standard SOPs. So what we did, we converted all our SOPs into a video library. So if, let's say, they wanted to understand how do you issue a policy, or how do you, let's say, what we call pass an endorsement, you make some changes on the policy, or how do you, raise a claim, right? Or how do you issue a refund? So we came out with, these videos, quick 2-minute videos. So from the library, if somebody requests, it's sent to him on WhatsApp. He goes to the video, he learns, and then he immediately does it. So that's one way by which, we were able. It's a very simple example, right? Now coming to a more complex one, we also leverage co-browsing, right? So you get onto the net, the distributor or the customer gets onto the net, and then, you navigate him, through the various screens, and then help him understand. So co-browsing again, became a very effective, way of coaching, and training, right? That's again one way which we did. And then, and then now what is happening is, as we are in the API economy, right? As you go up the value chain and you're talking about, a lot of, large distributors, right? There's API integration at play, and therefore, the whole time has got crunched. So, it's a very, very, tech savvy environment, that we live in, from an enablement perspective. And to a point around, those multiple dimensions, top line, renewal, loss ratio, all of that, that's already in play. It's very much, in existence, across multiple players across various markets.
Good. Because that's an area where it will become very to differentiate the compensation paid to somebody who is really giving you quality business versus somebody who is not, and holding that accountability or a customer experience or renewability from an insurance standpoint. That really is becoming going to become a factor of significance. Coming to my last question, more on the dimensions. All these projects are less of technology, but they need the leader's special skills in terms of envisioning the strategy correctly, enabling the organization to implement it appropriately, or even in the other dimensions of. So these are all beyond technology, people dimensions, the organization structure, the project dimensions, and or even whether you do a big bang or an iterative. What are your views and learnings, especially in the kind of age we are getting into, where the time spans, expectations, market demands are going shorter and shorter? So how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, no, I think that's again a very interesting question, Mangesh, because there is typically, a tendency to focus on the harder aspects, or the more tangible aspects, of these transitions, like the technology tool, right? And there are various studies,
Yes.
which show that the technical aspect is possibly, 15 or 20% of the entire journey, right? It's the cultural aspect, it is the whole, it's the whole landscape, right? How do you manage that? So,
Yeah.
Mangesh, to answer, the various dimensions of the question, right? How do you manage this transition, and also how do you keep it going in terms of, convincing your stakeholders? I think that's why I said, that the first thing is to keep the customer in mind. It starts with the customer need, right? If you know what, if this is the customer's need, then there is no need to convince anyone, about the need for the technology, right? Because you are here to solve a problem, right? And use data. See, the moment it's data talking, then it's not about whether it's your idea or his idea, or whether it's about some other part of the landscape, right? It's all about using data and customers. So it starts with that. The
Yeah.
other is, and that's something which I learned during my Lean Six Sigma days in GE, is also to ensure that you can you involve your stakeholders right up front. Because what happens is,
Yes.
very often, people, for various reasons, maybe secrecy, maybe fear of being pushed back, they develop a project, in a closed user group, and then maybe just a few days before launch, they go and speak to stakeholders. When they get some opposition, maybe there is a compromise, and then what finally is launched is not the full version, right? Maybe it's a diluted version, and which may not necessarily see the light of day. Whereas if you involve your stakeholders right up front, figure out who are the detractors, who are the promoters, take their feedback into account, right? And then everybody is part of the journey going forward, and you do the heavy lifting, so to speak, upfront, then your journey becomes smoother as you go toward the day of the launch. So then you've considered everybody and taken everybody on board. And then when you launch it, because you've taken everybody's feedback into account, everybody owns it, there is excitement, and then you take it forward. And also in terms of sustaining it, I think sometimes, from a speed, because you spoke about the fact that we also need to take it to speed. I think what is sometimes good is, to take a multi-generational approach rather than launch, the full version of the product and wait for perfection. Launch a minimum viable product which works, and then, keep adding features based on feedback so that you're agile yet comprehensive. So I think some of these, mantras, should work.
Thanks. Absolutely a very interesting conversation. I think we can keep on going on, and with so many questions that I have, and we'll have maybe another session with so many dimensions to ask about. But it was really pleasure to have all these insights and across all the dimensions that you have talked about, whether it is relating to the use cases, the innovation, and what I absolutely liked is about the end-to-end transformation, because typically I see many of the cases where people are just adopting technology because of a peer pressure in the industry. But the elements that you gave to our audiences in terms of the true transformation and how grassroots the organizational capability is changed is something that's a key learning for me, and it's something that you have been able to execute, not just envision, and take your organization, your teams along, has been, and to pass on the message. Thanks a lot, Dipu. It was great pleasure talking to you as always, and these learnings I'm sure will really help all our audiences in the industry to really pick up things. Thank you. Thanks, and look forward
Thank
to
you, Mangesh.
catching up with you again.
Yeah. No, it was a lovely conversation, and I very much enjoyed, chatting with you as well, right? It's a two-way conversation, right? So you made it as pleasurable as it could be, right? So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deep. Thank you.